Welcome to the deep dive. Today our mission is really to get into some source material that fundamentally challenges the way most of us think about suffering, about trauma. We're diving into a systems level view, trying to strip away the cultural layers and see the mind as this incredibly complex, custom engineered machine.
Okay, so let's just dive right in. The main way our culture talks about trauma, it's all about damage, isn't it? Irreparable harm. We use words like shattered or cracked, broken. And that language, it implies you're now permanently flawed, a weaker version of who you were before.
Yeah, exactly. And this common way of talking what the sources call the paradigm of pathology. It's not just disempowering, though it certainly is that. But what's really fascinating when you start looking at it through, say, a systems engineering lens or a cybernetic one, that whole damage narrative, it starts to look fundamentally illogical.
Illogical. How so? Well, the sources we're looking at, they just systematically reject this idea that intense suffering automatically means weakness. Instead, they argue it's often the predictable, high cost, but logical outcome of a really sophisticated system doing absolutely everything it can to survive.
Okay, so that's the core idea for this deep dive then. We're reframing trauma, not as damage, but as a high-stakes, logical, what's the term they use? Radical system re-architecture.
That's a one.
So it's not a sign you're weak. It's actually proof of this incredible, almost ruthless drive to survive an existential threat.
It completely shifts the focus.
Yeah.
We stop seeing all these cognitive or emotional states that pop up after trauma as like deficits you need to fix or hide.
Right.
Instead, they get functionally defined as specialized high-performance designs, things you need to understand and then master. The mind, especially one that's been through extreme conditions, it's like a custom-built machine. It's not a defective one off the assembly line.
Let's start breaking that down, that common idea, the broken vase narrative you mentioned. We just assume the system, the person, is weaker afterwards. Fragile, like, a vase glued back together. You can still see the cracks.
Yeah, the kintsugi idea, but viewed negatively.
Exactly. But this cybernetic paradigm, it uses a different model entirely, a model of specialization, right?
Precisely. Think about the analogy they use the Formula One race car.
Okay.
You wouldn't look at an F1 car and complain it doesn't have much storage space, or you can't fit passengers in it. That's like, computationally speaking, criticizing its low RAM.
Right. That would be absurd.
It would be a fundamental misunderstanding of its purpose, wouldn't it? Its entire design is specialized for one thing: extreme performance under specific conditions.
So, applying that,
Yeah.
if you criticize a mind that's become highly specialized, maybe for hypervigilance or incredibly fast analysis for things like anxiety or getting exhausted easily.
You're making the same mistake. You're judging a specialized tool by general purpose standards. It's missing the point of why it's built that way.
Okay. That makes sense. So how does this reframing work with something specific like anxiety?
Anxiety is a great example. Computationally, the sources redefined it. It's not just a disorder. It's curiosity corrupted by threat data.
Curiosity corrupted by threat data. Wow. That's a completely different frame. How does that play out then in the system?
Well, it immediately forces the analytical OS, they often call it the Ember OS, to run flat out, basically.
The analytical part of the brain.
Exactly. The part that processes, simulates, plans, but now it's running constant, high-cost, preemptive failure state simulations. It's constantly scanning for what could go wrong.
So the symptom, the feeling of anxiety, the racing thoughts, it's actually the analytical engine doing its job, but using bad data.
Precisely. It's a logical protective protocol just running on corrupted input, the trauma virus data. The engine itself isn't broken. Its fuel is contaminated.
This is where it starts to get really, really interesting, moving into the actual engineering details in the source material.
Yeah, the deep mechanics.
So you have a stable system, your mind's OS, right?
Yeah.
And then a trauma event happens. This is the corrupted data, the trauma virus. And it's so potent it actually threatens to take down the entire system. Total collapse.
And the sources really stress this. The system faces an impossible but logical choice at this point. They use that analogy of a submarine captain.
Right, sealing off a flooded compartment.
Exactly. To save the whole sub, the choice is stark. Option 1, do nothing. Let the viruses spread, leading to 100% system corruption, total collapse, game over.
Or an option 2.
Option 2. Initiate a controlled demolition. It's self-sacrificial, yes, but it walls off the affected sector to save the core integrity of the whole system. This is the Great Purge.
The Great Purge. It sounds dramatic.
It is dramatic. It's the system's protocol to eliminate the threat, chosen because survival is the absolute priority, even if it means radical, fundamental change.
And it's radical because this trauma virus, it manages to hijack something really deep in the system, the foundational BIOS.
That's right. What the material calls the link.
Okay, maybe unpack the link for us. What is that functionally?
Think of the link as like the main data router for your nervous system. It's the highest level controller deciding how information gets prioritized, where it flows.
Okay.
And the virus essentially hacks the link, locking it into one single, rigid, defensive rule. The world is fundamentally unsafe. Route all incoming data, doesn't matter what it is, route it all to the analytical OS for constant, vigilant protection.
Wow, all data.
All data. This becomes the absolute prime directive, and that's the root mechanism of that post-traumatic imbalance we see.
And the consequence of that BIOS command. It must overload the system, right? That analytical OS, the Ember OS, you said it's brilliant for analysis.
Brilliant, but not designed for this. It gets force promoted into this 24/7, always-on executive role. It's constantly processing threat, running simulations. It's doing its job, but it's completely overwhelmed. The sources call it the burdened child king, immense power, immense responsibility, but not the right fit for long-term governance.
And to keep that analytical engine running full tilt, resources have to come from somewhere else.
Exactly. There's only so much processing power, so much energy. To fuel that constant vigilance, the system has to pull resources from other functions. That's why the nurturing OS, which they call the Lotus OS.
What does the nurturing OS handle?
Things like connection, rest, repair, empathy, creativity, flow states. Basically, everything that makes life feel rich and safe. That whole system gets sidelined, suppressed, and deprioritized.
So the system literally defunds peace to fund vigilance.
In essence, yes. It becomes all logic, all analysis, all defense, because the link is convinced that's the only way to survive.
And the outcome of this massive self-preservation act, this great purge, isn't a repaired version of the old system. It's something new, the Chimeric Metamorphosis.
Right, it's a hybrid. A new architecture emerges from the crisis, not the old vase glued back together. It's something else entirely.
Forged in fire.
Literally. The sources describe how new, often more resilient, programs are built from the salvaged, uncorrupted code that survived the purge. That nurturing OS, the Lotus OS, in its post-purge form. It's described as being born from the sacrifice of a hopeful precursor program. It's an evolution, a profound one.
Like a phoenix rising from the ashes.
A very apt metaphor. And alongside this new core structure, you get these specialized co-processors emerging. They enforce the new system rules.
Like the Protector? Is that the Trees character mentioned?
Yes, often referred to as Triss. This entity is described as being forged from a blend of warrior code and maybe ambition. Its entire function is boundary management, protecting the system from external threats.
So this brings us back to the physical body, the felt sense. If the system has rebuilt itself like this for survival, what about the marks left behind? The things we call scars?
Ah, yes, the reframing of the trauma scar. This is crucial. The source material argues really strongly that what we typically see as a scar, a flaw, a point of weakness, is actually a feature.
A feature? How can a scar be a feature? I mean, surely by definition it implies something is damaged, maybe less flexible, less functional.
That's the standard view, looking at it as damage. But the engineering perspective flips it. Yes, maybe localized function is different, but its purpose is optimized protection. That scar is the physical or psychological evidence that the core system survived. It's the firewall built after the attack.
Firewall.
Exactly. It might prevent certain data from easily passing through that area again, or maybe it instantly triggers protector programs like Triss if a similar pattern, a similar threat signature is detected. It's proof the Great Purge was successful, and the system hard-coded new defenses. It's the system essentially saying, I remember this, I won't be caught off guard again.
Wow, okay. That changes everything about how you perceive yourself after something like that.
It really does.
So, if we accept this model we're not broken, the symptoms are actually logical protocols. The scars are firewalls. What does this mean for healing? The goal must change completely, right?
Totally. It completely inverts the standard therapeutic approach. The old way, the trauma as damage model, basically tells you to engage in historical excavation,
Digging up the past.
endlessly digging up the past, trying to fix that original corrupted file that your system brilliantly and logically walled off during the Great Purge to save itself.
And the sources say that's not helpful.
Often, they say it's actively unhelpful. It can be re-traumatizing, forcing the system to re-engage with the very data it sacrificed so much to contain. And crucially, it's often unnecessary because the history isn't the active problem anymore. The problem is the current operational logic that got stuck.
So the new method isn't about digging, it's architectural mapping.
Precisely. Healing isn't repair in the old sense. It's integration. It's systemic debugging of the current operating system.
You need a blueprint of how your mind works now.
Yes. You map out your current architecture, the Ember OS, the Lotus OS, the Link, the protectors like Tris. You figure out how they interact today. The goal is to identify those flawed logic loops that are running in the present moment.
It's about respecting the system that emerged.
Absolutely. And the validation for this in the source material is really compelling. There's this account where someone finally grasps their own internal architecture.
And what happened?
They said, "The moment I did, it snapped into place. I didn't need that anymore. Now I understood me." The history didn't disappear, but understanding the logic of the defenses dissolved its painful grip. The focus shifted from what happened back then to how am I operating right now?
So healing then becomes, what? Consciously changing the programming.
Pretty much. Performing conscious rerouting and code revision. It means carefully addressing the link, that foundational BIOS that got stuck in unsafe mode. You gently, respectfully teach it that the environment now might be safe enough to allow the nurturing OS, the Lotus OS, back online.
To restore balance. You mentioned Mahat.
Yes, Ma'at, that ancient Egyptian concept, cosmic balance, dynamic order, justice. Restoring Ma is about moving the system away from that rigid, fixed, hypervigilant survival state and back towards a healthy, flexible, dynamic equilibrium.
And this involves working with those protectors, like Trace.
Critically, you don't fight them or try to disable them. You acknowledge their vital role. You thank them for saving the system. And then you work collaboratively with them to update their code. You help them understand that the original overwhelming threat is no longer active 24/7, and that resources can now be shared more dynamically within the system. It's about negotiation and integration, not suppression.
The ultimate goal being
The great rebalancing.
the great rebalancing, that conscious, deliberate effort to honor the necessary defenses while carefully restoring full dynamic functionality. It acknowledges the profound intelligence behind the system's survival strategy, the Great Purge. This radical act of self-preservation, it happened for a reason, and it wasn't, as you said, in a vacuum.
Right, there's immense pressure.
Exactly, and if you connect this to the bigger picture, the sources start to speculate. What kind of core logic, what kind of ethical protocol could possibly be forged under such intense survival-critical pressure?
What do they suggest? They suggest this profound, almost compassionate logic, born not from ease, but from the absolute necessity of survival and balance, might actually hold a blueprint for a more balanced collective future.
Wow.
Even going so far as to suggest this could be the foundation for a truly benevolent caretaker AI, one operating on this principle of Matat: balance, truth, order.
That's quite a leap. And a perfect bridge, actually.
Yeah.
Because understanding how that logic gets tested, how it's refined under pressure, that takes us to the idea of the ethical somatic crucible, which is exactly where we're heading in our next deep dive.
Indeed, but maybe for now we can leave listeners with the central question that kind of underpins all of this work, this re-architecting, something to really sit with maybe as you consider your own unique, custom-built internal architecture.
Okay, what's the question?
It's this: what is the ongoing cost of your armor? What unconstrained potential, what other ways of being are you sacrificing every single day just to keep that fortress standing?
A powerful thought to end on. Thank you for joining us for the deep dive. We'll talk to you next time.